Hello travelers, and welcome back to another episode of the Architect's Forward, and this time it's hammer time. We're going to be looking at the hammer, the generic high command for Mounthaven in their action pack. And as always, we'll begin by looking at the lore of the hammer, which will actually have a bit of lore for the anvil as well, who we haven't seen yet, but they kind of go hand in hand. And I couldn't resist myself with the title. The hierarchy of the Mounthaven army is the most unique in all of Lindworm. It has no military ranks, as such, and lacks a strict and permanent chain of command, something that is surprising to those accustomed to the intractable ways of dwarven society. The detachments that emerge from the mountains to do battle are more like war bands, or bands of heroes fighting together, but this does not mean that their way of fighting is chaotic or uncoordinated. On the contrary, their ability to work as a team is legendary, as this comes from the respect that warriors have for one another and from their deep and lengthy training together. After all, the true soldiers of Mounthaven are descended from families dedicated exclusively to fighting for generations, as befits such a structured society. Each warband always has two commanders, a hammer and an anvil. Both positions are not permanent military positions or ranks, but are determined before entering combat when the detachment is formed. Where the anvil is chosen by social rank, the hammer is always the best combatant in the warband. When its members do not agree on who will hold this position, an unarmed duel is held to settle this issue. Although, in the vast majority of cases, it's not necessary. The hammers are the warrior leaders, and their job is to excel in combat, identifying and eliminating the most powerful enemies in addition to directly commanding the troops. The dual leadership typical of Mounthaven does not create confusion, and it is tremendously effective for the dwarves. They will not choose between following their greatest warrior or renouncing their traditions, but will fight inspired by the vision of an unstoppable hammer, crushing the enemy against an unbreakable anvil. So that's a taste of who the leaders of the Mounthaven Forces are. In this case, the hammer, the warrior leader of the Mounthaven troops that will be taking the battlefield in Warcrow. And before we see what the hammer does on the table, I'd just like to say that if you are enjoying this content, please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. It helps me know what people are watching and enjoying. And as always, any feedback you have or comments or suggestions are appreciated. If you did feel like you want to support the channel financially, there is a link to a Buy Me a Coffee in the description below. And, if people are giving suggestions, people that are, providing to the Buy Me a Coffee, I'll definitely, their suggestions will get pushed up the list of things that I might be trying to get done. Additionally, there is a link, affiliate link to the corvusbelli store. So if you're ordering something from there, like the Mounthaven release bundle, and you use that affiliate link, it will help support the channel. But with that, let's jump into the hammer's profile, which I know I am very excited for. Starting off, we see that the hammer comes in at 40 points, which is a high cost for a character, but is consistent with a lot of the other high commands. For that cost, she is, of course, an officer, and she will be bringing 2 command tokens to help the powerful Mounthaven command abilities. Like the other dwarves, she does have the slow speed of 2-2 and a slow charge of just 8. However, on a more positive note, she does have high wounds. She has 5 wounds, which is quite good for an unattached character, or a character when they are unattached, and a good whip of 2 orange dice, and a pretty good morale of 2, which means that she can activate a bit more, especially than the other dwarves who are mostly morale 1. As a high command, of course, she is AVB 1 because you can only have one high command, so of course you can only bring one hammer. And I say that, but some people are guessing that maybe because that hammer and anvil part of the lore, that when the anvil comes out, you will be able to field them, and they might be some other type of high command with a special ability, but that is not something we have now. Moving into keywords, we see that the hammer is elite, which is really good. It means it's just a solid boost to her ability to hit, defend, and pass those willpower checks because she'll be able to, if she wants, change those hollow hits, shields, and specials into solid ones. She has the Join Dwarf Infantry, which will allow her to join any infantry that has been released from Mounthaven yet, and likely in the first wave, because we don't really see in the lore any non-dwarfen infantry in the Mounthaven Force. She also has the Preferred Terrain Rugged ability, which is nice, and as I've said for the other dwarves that have it, it'll help prevent her from being slowed if she has to move through rugged terrain, which is always nice because 2-2 and slowed is really painful. And it's quite nice, but she does actually have a conquest even when she's not attached, so if you are running her around by herself, although I don't think you will, she will be contributing to the battlefield and contributing to that scenario scoring. So that's always good. Scoring points is how you win games. Moving into her attack, we see that she has a red, 2 orange, and a yellow. This will average 3.38 and a maximum of 5. This is actually pretty good damage and gets better when we look at her switches and her ability to stress. An important thing to remember again is that elite is making all of those dice more reliable. It means that red dice gives you guaranteed at least one hit, and it makes the oranges and yellows more likely to give you those hits. If she stresses, she is adding a blue and a black, which will boost the specials that she's likely to get. Without it, she's likely to get 2.75 with a max of 5, and it will go up to 4.5 if she stresses. Additionally, when she's adding that blue and black, she will be adding 1.13 blocks with a maximum of 2. That is helpful for both protecting her if she's fighting someone that can hit her back, but also it'll be important for her second switch. Speaking of the switches, the first switch, for 2 specials, you give your opponent the disarm state. You are likely to get this even without stressing. Doesn't matter if you get this twice or once. As long as you get it once, you'll disarm. Anything more than that is just, extra. Her second stress, is a stress. It's for a shield or a block, and it lets you turn a block into a hit. So this allows you to, if you're stressing, boost your damage to average of 4.5 hits, essentially adding the extra block, the 1.13 blocks you're likely to get from the defense and turning them into hits. So this actually makes it so if she doesn't need those blocks, she can punch a bit harder. Moving into her defense, we see she has a green, 2 blue, and a black. And she will average 2.75 blocks with her maximum of 5. Again, don't forget to apply the elite. She will average 0.63 hollow specials with it going up to an average of 1 if you choose to stress to add that extra orange and yellow die, which in addition will also add, give you approximately 1.38 hits. Now that's hollow special is important for your switch, which is a hollow special will add a block to your roll. You're not very likely, or it's not very reliable to get this, even if stressing. If you stress, on average, it means you'll get 1. But hey, it's just another die face that gives you a block. So now, solid shields will give you a block, will count as a block. Hollow shields will count as a block because of elite, and now also hollow specials. So this just helps increase your already pretty good defense between the 5 wounds and your good die pool and elite. But let's get into some of her abilities. Her first ability is a passive called Courage. It requires no line of sight and targets all allied units within 12, so that's a pretty good range. And this ability will allow you, all your targets will use the first entry of their combat panel when attacking or defending. So essentially this means that your unit will always use their top profile, even if they're down to the last man, or dwarf in this case. And this will let your units keep fighting and defending at full strength, which will really help you in those battles of attrition where both forces are hitting each other, slowly wearing each other down. Your opponent's units will start, hitting less hard and defending less well, but your dwarves will keep fighting at full strength. So that is very good. It also helps you respond still hitting hard, even if you've taken a massive hit from one of those super high damaging units that are present in the game, like Shadows of the U. Her second passive ability, when she is unattached, is Unwavering. And this is a permanent ability, so that means it will also still apply when she is attached. It also has no line of sight, and it targets all allied units. So that no range on it. It is every single board-wide unit in your army. And what it does is it says the targets, so the units, do not cancel dice or symbols when participating in multiple combats. So what this does is it essentially makes your entire force, as long as she's in your company, immune to the negative effects of multiple combat, which means if your opponents gang up on you, it's as if they were fighting you 1v1. And this is very powerful. Even if the hammer is dead or gets killed, it's a permanent ability, so it keeps applying. So this is really good, especially given how slow your dwarves are. There's a higher chance you get outmaneuvered and get ganged up on. It also means that if you don't want to push your opponent back because you don't want them to be, you might not be able to follow up because you move so slow, you don't need to worry about staying engaged and, taking the penalties of getting ganged up on because there are none for you. So it's a very strong and very powerful ability. But let's also see what she does when she's attached. Personally, I think, and you'll see soon why, but I think she'll usually be attached. First off, she brings an extra orange to your unit's willpower to help keep your troops around and also help with some of those feat. And importantly, she gives an extra morale, which is especially good given the low morale of Mounthaven troops, to keep them fighting, keep them being able to stress to add bonuses, and all that good stuff. In attack, she interestingly brings a blue die, and this is actually the same in defense. And she has the ability in attacking to add a blue and a black die. This is kind of weird. Normally you'd expect to see offensive dice be added in the offense when you're attacking, not defensive ones. But there's a reason for that. And that is when she's attacking, or when her unit's attacking, they gain the switch, a block can be turned into a hit. So that means those blue and black dice that she could be adding in offense actually help boost damage. This is extremely powerful when it comes to Mounthaven Militia, because Mounthaven Militia can turn specials into blocks. So a hammer in a unit of Mounthaven Militia can turn specials into blocks and those blocks into hits, which means when they roll their dice, any special, block, or hit will count as a hit as long as they're allowed to use switches, which is extremely powerful. When stressing, I believe when I ran the math, if they have a hammer attached in stress, this makes the militia get an average of 7 hits on the attack with a maximum of 12, because every single die in their roll has the potential of getting 2 hits through the conversion of switches. So that is a combination I expect we will probably see. But keeping the train going, in defense, she does add a blue dice and has the ability to stress to add an orange and yellow, so you get to be hitting a bit while you're defending. She does help boost their defense, though, too, because she gives them a double special switch to add a shield. So with those extra blue, orange, and yellow dice, potentially, you actually might be adding from that probably at least 1, if not 2, potentially even 3 shields between rolling a shield on the blue, possibly, and then the number of specials. Okay, and finally, on her card, when she's attached, she does also give an additional conquest, which, as we say, scoring wins games, not killing. So anything that helps you score more points is always good. So yeah, additional conquest, always nice to have. Now, she does also still have the courage ability while she is attached. So effectively, because courage is on both the attached and untouched form, and then unwavering is permanent, when she is attached, she doesn't actually lose access to either of her passive abilities. Both her passive skills will still be in effect, no matter whether she is attached or unattached, which really does make it so she is very likely going to be something you want to have attached and not walking around on her own. So that has been the hammer. Yeah, overall, I think she's a very survivable and dependable high command. She has two very strong abilities to help your faction, your company, win those battles of attrition, keeping them fighting at their full attack profile, while also making it so they don't, suffer from being ganged up in battle. She also provides a lot of very good abilities to her unit, including the very important bonus to morale, and she has that potential for very high damage when she's paired with militia. So I think realistically, at least at this point, her best home is in those militia, just because the really crazy amount of damage she can have that unit potentially do, thanks to the cool switches, is just really hard to say no to. But those are my thoughts about the hammer. I think she's a really cool high command. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and as we get more games in, our experience with her and which units you find her. And maybe the militia isn't the right place. Maybe one of the other more elite units is. But with that, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you get into Mounthaven and start playing with them as soon as possible. And until that time, may the dice be ever in your favor.